Welcome to Renew Church this morning. We're glad that you're here with us. We are starting a new series for our fall kickoff. Of course, kickoff every fall is when Renew kind of gets everything back in gear, our kids programs, our Renew groups. So we're glad that you're here this morning. We're starting with a new series this fall called Why Church. You know, once upon a time in Canada, people went to church. In fact, if you look at some statistics, weekly attendance at all kinds of religious services in Canada went from around 50% in the mid-60s to just about 10% in 2015. Now, understand that includes mosques, temples, gurdwaras, synagogues, everything. That includes Catholics and Protestants. Everybody's being included in that number. So the percentage of Canadians in a Christian contemporary Bible-centered church like ours here at Renew is probably very small in the GTA, probably somewhere around 2 to 3% of the population. So it's very low. So the fact that you are in church this morning really says something about you. You're not part of the majority, let's say. Probably it means one of a few different things. Maybe, first category, you're just somebody that follows the rules. You know, you were told to go to church when you were little, your parents took you to church, and now as you've gotten older, you just kind of continue in that rhythm, you continue in the pattern, and so you just kind of follow along with what you've been taught. Maybe you're in a second category, and maybe you're just desperate. That's why you find yourself in church today. Maybe everything's going wrong for you in your life. Maybe your finances are falling apart, your relationships are not working, you've lost your job. Maybe this morning your dog even puked on your shoes when you were getting ready to come to church. But everything's going so bad, you're like, I'm going to go to church because I need some help in some way. A third category of people might be those that actually appreciate church for other reasons that a lot of people just don't get. You know, they understand something about it that the general population just doesn't understand. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm going to let you in on a little secret this morning, and that is that most people don't get church. Most people don't get it. They don't understand why. You know, years ago, it was an expectation. It was a cultural norm. If you didn't show up at church, your friends or neighbors would say, hey, why weren't you in church on Sunday? And people just assumed that that was the thing to do. But today, people really feel that they have a choice. And so they live out of a different expectation. The choice that most people are making as we look around is to stay away. It's to do other things with their time and energy on a Sunday and through the week. You can hear the rationale of these people in a lot of different ways. There are a lot of different voices that would echo this kind of sentiment. You can listen to atheists like Richard Dawkins that would talk about, you know, that the fact that Christianity and church and these things are just kind of silly. Cynics like Bill Maher would sort of say the same thing. You can listen to comedians that are really quite funny, that have kind of an interesting perspective on this. Guys like Bill Burr, George Carlin, they'll talk about why they don't go to church anymore. And it's sort of humorous. There's a lot of truth actually mixed in there. But even Christians who used to attend church, you know, the internet is littered with stories. You can go on and find articles of Christians, even sometimes even pastors, that say why I don't attend church, why I left the church scene. And so you can hear those voices in a lot of places. Maybe you're one of those people that just don't get church. You're like, why get up on a Sunday morning? Why pray? Why talk to that invisible man in the sky? Why do we do this? Why do we read from that ancient book? Why do we give our money to different things? Why do we come to church to do that? Why listen to that guy preach every Sunday? Why listen to all of the things that you're doing wrong? It's bad enough I have to sit through a long message, but when most of it is him telling me all of the things that I'm not doing right, why would I bother? Why go to church? Why church? Well, what you don't get to hear very often is a reasonable, thoughtful explanation of why some people really appreciate church and why they're so committed to it. Because the truth is, amid a lot of bleak statistics, people are very committed to church in some places. There are many churches that are thriving today. Many churches are expanding, actually starting new churches, new congregations, and new campuses. Renew Church started Mayfield West Campus just last fall, and lots of people are coming to church, many for the first time, and they really get a lot out of it. Next fall, we plan to start a new campus out in Cambridge. We have Eric and Austin Jensen that are with us, and they're committed to getting this started. We've got a team of people there, and people are really excited. So there are people that really get this. And I can tell you with confidence, the majority of people who attend Renew Church, They really do get it. They appreciate church very deeply. So I want to thank you for joining us during this series. Whether you're joining us live or online, thank you for being here with us today. Over the next 5 weeks, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share with you 5 very compelling reasons for why church. 5 reasons that once you've gone through these 5 reasons, you're going to look at church, I hope, in a very different way. I'm confident that you will have some reconsidering to do at the end of those 5 weeks. Not because I'm going to dump a whole bunch of guilt on you and make you feel like, oh, I got to go to church, but because you're going to capture the vision that a lot of people have already at Renew Church for why church is so valuable and why it is so essential to their existence. You're going to gain a passion, I think, and just hanging out with us on these 5 Sundays, if you'll come out for these 5 weeks, and just hanging out with some of the people from Renew, I think you're going to start to see, wow, these are great people, and your perspective on church is going to change. So let's jump into it. Why church? Reason number 1 that we're going to talk about this week is this. I need to orient my life around the main thing. The main thing, whatever that is. Obviously, as Christians, we're going to be talking about God, but I'm going to be spending a good amount of time this morning talking about the main thing before I come back and talk about this whole concept of why church. We're going to connect it back toward the end of the message, so just kind of track with me. First of all, we have to kind of look at the fact that everyone orients around something. Everyone does this. And so I want to begin today by highlighting some fairly obvious facts. The first one is this. You are not the center of the universe. I'm sure your parents probably told you this at some point, but you know what? The world got along just fine before you came along. We assume that it's going to continue on fine when you're gone. The universe doesn't revolve around you. You're not the center. And so the next thing is you have to decide if there is a center of the universe. Is there really one? In other words, is there a being or an idea or a narrative or a unifying principle that makes sense of all of what we see and experience? Now, deciding yes or no to that question, both of them require a leap of faith because we can't absolutely prove it. But whichever way you decide, and get this, whichever way you decide, yes or no, there is this central idea, you are going to live out of your belief that you have. And not making a decision, because I know some of you are like, well, I'm just not going to make a decision. Not making a decision is basically saying that there isn't a main idea, or at least you're not going to act as if there is a central idea that you're, operating around. The third idea here is that you can only live purposefully to the degree that the universe is purposeful. That's a pretty basic philosophical premise. If the universe is truly random, then there really is no meaning or purpose for anything that we do. The best that you could do is to create some kind of a meaning for yourself in these 70 or so years that you're here on the planet. But it's really kind of an illusion. You create it, you live out of it, and maybe you feel that makes your life better, but you can really only live purposefully to the degree that the universe is purposeful. So if you're here this morning, I'm kind of assuming that you're open to the idea of this main thing, that there is something that we should be orienting around. Otherwise, it's kind of like, why would you even be here in the first place? What social scientists have discovered is that people feel the need to orient themselves around something bigger than themselves. You probably didn't need a social scientist to point that out to you. All you have to really do is look around you at society, look inside yourself, and you can kind of see. We all sort of do this. We look for something bigger, something more meaningful, and we try to orient our life around it. What do I mean by orienting your life? Well, what do you organize around? What do you prioritize in your life? What are the big things that you say, this is what I'm doing, and the other things I'm going to have to work in around it? What shapes your values? What are the things that really impact the way that you choose to do things or what you believe? What do you give your time to? What do you give your energy to? What do you give your money to, right? That's a big factor that helps us identify what is it that we're really orienting around. And here's a big one. What do your hopes rest on? When you think of your life and what you're really hopeful about and what, gives you the strength to get up every day and keep moving forward, what are those things? This is what you're orienting your life around. We do a lot of things, but we only really orient around one kind of big idea most of the times, something that could be the center of our life. Now, a great example of this, I think, is minor hockey. I love coaching. I've been doing it for many years, and I'm coaching again this year, my youngest son's hockey team. And it's a lot of fun. We really like it. But one of the things you see in minor hockey is that there are some people that play minor hockey, and there are some people that orient their life around minor hockey. And I can tell you, there's a big difference. When you see it in action, you notice the difference, the amount of time and energy and everything that just goes into it for some people. You know, once something becomes the center of your life, you start to depend on that thing to provide some of your fundamental needs, really all of your fundamental needs. Because when you think about it, you're giving so much time and energy to this thing, it has to be giving something back to you. And if it's not, why would you continue to invest in it? And you can see this pretty clearly in all kinds of different things that we do. For example, I can only give time and energy into hockey in accordance with what I feel that it's bringing back to me. You know, if it's only bringing me exercise, I'll give a minimal investment to it, right? Most people will go to the gym a couple of times in a week just to kind of stay in shape and so on. You'll give it a minimal investment. But you'll give more value to hockey if it gives you more than that. For example, if it's investing in my family, if it gives me quality time with my children, then I'm like, wow, you know, I'll give more time to that because, you know, it's a bigger thing. I'll give even more to it if I'm starting to build my identity around it. Think about this. There are people that say, well, I am a hockey player. I am a coach. They identify around these things. Now I'm going to give more time and energy. And some people feel the need to win, and they're going to like, oh, you know, I need to win in order to feel valuable. And so now hockey becomes even bigger for them. And I would say the biggest one is when we get to the point of putting our actual hopes and dreams on it. This is like the parents that say, my kid's going to make the NHL, right? We've met people like this. Very few make it. But when people get to that point of pinning so much of their hopes and dreams on this, wow, they're willing to invest a lot. And you can see how it becomes much bigger, something we orient around. Now that's just one example. There's all kinds of different activities that I could use as examples and so on, but everyone orients around something. It may be a sport. It could also be an activity, a hobby, a social group, a group of people that you just like to get together to do certain things with. It could be your own desires, something that you've really considered important, and you organize everything else around it. It could be a substance. We know many people that kind of get sucked in and their whole world revolves around the use of a substance. It could be a person. It could be a religion or a philosophy. It could be control. Some people orient their whole life around being able to control whatever's going on. It could be money. It could be fame. So many different things. We're going to just take a pause right here for a second, and then we'll come back and revisit this in a few minutes.
When How I Met Your Mother first went on the air, I ran into an actress that I knew, and she said, "Are you just like so happy all the time?"
Why am I unhappy? Okay, Stephanie Gaga hybrid person. Why are you unhappy? Why is it that you want to quit music?
And I remember thinking like, oh, that sitcom's coming. Like that sitcom, it's coming. And when I got it, I mean, I won't say it was a depression, but you kind of go through a disappointment because that fame or that thing didn't satisfy the way you thought it was going to satisfy.
I had bought into the not uncommon notion that when I taste success, when I get over there, then I'll be happy. But the strangest thing happened. As the show got more successful, I got more depressed.
I thought it would be good to be rich and famous. It would be good to be the opposite of this. It would be good to have stuff. It would be good to have money. It would be good to be invited to the party. Well, I've been invited. I've been in. We're having this chat in a private Swish members club in East London. It's super cool. There's bare brick walls. Everyone's double good looking. But I've been inside now. I've seen the other side of the looking glass. It ain't fucking worth it. It's not good. It don't feed your soul. I still feel empty inside.
I had everything a man could want, even then. I was a millionaire. I had beautiful women in my life. I had cars, a house, an incredible, a solid gold career, and a future. And yet, on a daily basis, I wanted to commit suicide.
As a Beatle, we made it, and there was nothing to do. We had money, we had fame, and there was no joy.
The media told me every day, and it's telling you every day what it is to be successful. So you've got MTV Cribs, you've got billionaires in front of your face, you have these extrinsic, external goals that will say, oh, Tom Shadyac has arrived. He has the right house, the right car, he flies privately. And when I got there, it was empty.
I was successful in the music business, I was successful in modeling, in television, in real estate. So I made all this money and I had all this success. And here I was going, okay, I still don't feel any different.
We are told that if we're beautiful, if we're skinny, if we're successful, famous, if we fit in, if everyone loves us, that we'll be happy. But that's not entirely true.
I don't like wasting my time spending days just shaking people's hands and smiling, taking selfies. It feels shallow to my existence. I have a lot more to offer than my image. I don't like being used to make people money. I feel sad when I'm overworked and that I just become a money-making machine and that my passion and my creativity take a back seat. That makes me unhappy.
If you are looking for fame to define you, then you will never be happy, and you will always be searching for happiness, and you will never find it in fame.
I was surrounded by all this wealth and all this fame and all this power, and yet they were all miserable, and I had never been more miserable.
You know, I thought that all would be helped and healed and soothed by fame.
Because when I get famous,
then I will be less lonely, and
Yes.
I will be understood, and I will be loved, and that love will go in and heal any of the broken parts. And then I came to see that it was actually quite isolating.
So everyone orients around something. That's pretty obvious. The second big point I want to make today is this, and that is that your main thing will define your existence. You better give some thought, some serious thought to what you choose to make that center, that main thing in your life, because it will define your existence. Social scientists have identified various fundamental needs that we all have as human beings. And none of the lists are exactly the same, but there's a lot of similarity in what the different social scientists identify as being essential to human existence. For example, Tony Robbins, who's not a social scientist, but he sort of is in a way. Many of you are familiar with him in the seminars that he does. But he names 6 basic human needs. Here they are: certainty, variety, significance, love or connection, growth, and contribution. He says without those 6 things, your existence really cannot flourish. You're not going to be happy or satisfied unless all of these 6 are working. So whatever we choose to orient our life around, it better be meeting these kinds of needs or we're going to be in trouble. If your main thing is meeting those kinds of needs, your life could be really, really good. But if your main thing is not meeting those needs, your life could really, really suck. And so you have to really understand, is what I'm choosing to orient my life around, is it helping me? Is it good for my existence? Whatever you choose, time is going to tell if your main thing really meets your basic needs or not. And interestingly, that seems to be what Jesus was saying in Matthew chapter 7. Look at what he says. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. You see, Jesus says that the storms of life, they're going to test your foundation. They're going to test your main thing. It's just a matter of time. And as we're going to see later on, Jesus seemed to be claiming that he knew what the main thing was that you should be building your life on and around. If you build your life on the main thing, it will weather every storm and it will give you a fulfilling life. I believe right to the end of your life, it will bring you that fulfillment. I was meeting with a friend this past week, and he was telling me a story. He was saying that he recently met a man who chose what's now available in Canada, that being the route of assisted suicide. He was a very old man, and his health was deteriorating. He was not suffering terribly. He could have lived longer. He had 4 children, but he decided that his life was no longer worth living, and so he was going to have this assisted suicide. Now, I realize this is a very complex issue, and I have a lot of compassion for people that are in that situation. I don't agree with assisted suicide in principle, but I understand that it's very complex. But I just couldn't help but think wow, here's this guy, he could be living longer, he could be spending more time with his kids, with his family, but he's choosing to end it. You know, guys, some main things are going to prove faulty quicker than other things. Some things are going to take some time before they prove, hey, no, this didn't bring me the satisfaction that I wanted. But I think if you find the right one, it will render satisfaction right to the end of your existence, even in times where you may be suffering. Now, I want to give you a caution here. If there is only one right thing, and we'll look at that some more, then here's the thing. A lot of things that you're going to orient your life around, a lot of things are just going to make your life suck. And you have to acknowledge this. And guys, Jesus seemed to be saying that as well in the same chapter that we just read from. Look at what it says in Matthew 7, verse 14. He says, "Small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." Only a few. Well, that brings us to our third point. Quite natural segue here. Many things are not worth making the main thing. And I hope that you can see that this morning. Many things are just not worth making the main thing. A very small amount of research will show that many things are not worth orienting your life around. We could talk about all kinds of things. Substances, right? A lot of people orient their life around drugs, alcohol, whatever. Money and stuff. You just saw the video. You saw people that had money and said, you know what, I had all this stuff and it just didn't satisfy me. We can talk about confidence and skill. A lot of people orient their life around the skill and confidence that they have. And I was reading from a blogger when I prepared this message, and here's what they said. They say, "This may not seem like much, but the last words my mom said to me before she died were, 'Baby, I'm scared.'" She wasn't scared of anything. She was a paramedic for over 20 years and had practically seen it all. That was the most horrifying part about watching her die. In all of the times that she'd been forced to go to the hospital, I had never heard her say that she was scared. And here she is, a very skilled and confident person at the end of her life, and she's scared. Many things aren't worth making the main thing. You know what? Fame. A lot of people, they believe that making them famous, it will provide for them what they need. But the truth is, the more that you ask these people, and again, we saw this in the video, if anything, fame seems to make people more prone to self-destructing. Pleasure is one that a lot of people orient their life around. How much pleasure can I get? How much fun can I have? And yet, again, the same thing, they come up empty. You know what? Even people can let you down. You'll hear a lot of people say, well, you know, it's all about people. But just people in itself, it may leave you empty as well. Here's another blog kind of entry that I saw. This person says, "I was a healthcare aide on a geriatric ward when a woman so old and frail that she looked dead already motioned to me to come to her. I put my ear next to her mouth and she quietly said, 'I just wanted to say goodbye to someone.' It broke my heart. She died a few days later." Guys, you're probably aware that one of the greatest fears that people have is this fear of dying alone. A lot of people have it. And here we have this woman in this story, exactly what's going on. Imagine all the people that she probably had relationship with in her life, all the people that she had given to in her life at some point. And now here she is dying alone. It's so sad. She just wanted to say goodbye to someone, as if to register the fact that she was there, that she had lived and died. Guys, I've seen a lot of people in the GTA make people what they orient around, and particularly their families and their kids. Take note of this. This is a big thing here where we live. And I want you to know this morning, this is very dangerous. You see, people are sure to disappoint you. Family is great and it's awesome and we should invest in it, but it's not the main thing. It's not worthy of being the main thing because relationships go away. And if you haven't lived long enough to see that, just hang around. You'll see. You know, that man who committed suicide in the story that I spoke about, the assisted suicide, my friend told me that he hadn't seen one of his children in 20 years. Guys, I'm telling you, you don't raise kids with the expectation that you're not going to see one of your kids for 20 years when you could be seeing them. This is what can happen in relationships. And guys, you know what? Even if your relationships work out, even if they stay, if you make relationships the center of your world, here's what's going to happen. You're going to become codependent. You're going to put everything into maintaining that relationship and keeping those people close to you, and what you're ultimately going to do, you're going to drive them away because they're not even worthy to be the center of your existence. They're not worthy of everything that you're putting on them and everything that you're trying to get from them. Well, some people say, after trying everything, they say, well, it's got to be philanthropy, it's got to be love, the thing that I orient my life around. And guys, you know what? Even these can be incomplete. They keep us active in good things and they bring fulfillment, way more fulfillment than these other things that we've discussed. But they still don't answer the big questions. You know, you can be a very loving person who, really gives a lot of their time and helps a lot of people, but you can still be filled with fear and anxiety. You can still be filled with angst over where you're going, where you came from, why evil exists. All of these questions still could be burning inside of you. So I want to give you quickly here 7 questions that you should be asking about your main thing, because many things are not worth being your main thing. But if you're trying to evaluate what should be my main thing, here's 7 things you should think about. First, does it tell me where I came from? This is the question of origins, because we all want to know where we came from. Secondly, does it tell me who I am? This answers the question of identity, because everyone wants to know, who am I? Thirdly, does it tell me why I'm here? This is the question of purpose. Okay, I got here, but why am I here? What am I supposed to do during these 70 years while I'm here on planet Earth? Number 4, does it make sense of the world? This is the question of meaning. Because whatever you orient your life around, it should give meaning to your existence. It should make sense of what you're doing every day. Number 5, does it help me live successfully? This is the question of happiness. Happiness is not the ultimate thing, but when you're orienting around the right thing, happiness is a natural byproduct of that, and you should sense that happiness. 6, does it help me know what's right and what is good? This is the question of morality. Does your main thing answer those questions for you? And finally, number 7, does it tell me where I'm going and how to get there? And this is the question of hope, because every one of us inside, we wonder, we want to know, where is it that I'm going? How do I get there? In a second, we're going to get to this last point of why church. And that's what we're talking about in this series. And we're going to see how the church addresses this challenge. But before we do that, I want to talk about this concept here called worthship. Ultimately, what we're talking about today is the intrinsic worth of certain things or ideas to bring us satisfaction. We're talking about the certain worth of a different path, of a different philosophy, of a different being. Guys, we can spend our lifetime giving worth to certain things, alcohol, relationships, vacations, whatever. But the true worth of those things, it is going to come to light. You're going to see the worthship of those things. If you're new to the church scene, you came into church this morning at whatever campus, and you sat down, and then someone made you stand up, and we're singing songs together. And you may find that a little weird. You're like, I've been to concerts, but this is weird. It's almost like you're singing to some invisible dude in the room. And honestly, that's kind of what we're doing. But it's worshiping. We call it worshiping. It's just one way that we worship, but we have this time of worship where we all get together and do that on Sunday. And you need to understand that word worship, it comes from this word worthship in the Old English. That's what it's about. It's saying that we've identified something or someone that we consider to be of great worth, so much so that we actually get together and we acknowledge it together. As Christians, we believe this. We believe we've come to discover the main thing, the one thing that is of infinite worth, the one thing that can make sense of everything. And so this is why we do that. And this leads me to the 4th point, and the main thing we want to talk about here today. Why church? And that is that the church makes God, and specifically Jesus, the main thing. This is what church does. At Renew Church here, we've talked a lot in recent months about this concept of the Logos. The Logos is a very interesting concept, and one you can go back and study in history, and particularly in philosophy. Going back 400 or so years before the time of Christ, philosophers started to look at the meaning of life in a very, specific way. They really wanted to understand what was at the center of the universe and what made sense of everything. They thought, it's very reasonable when we look at all of the order and purpose that exists in the universe, that there is something that makes sense of everything. All of the emotional, physical, spiritual, everything together, that it just kind of makes sense of it all. And this unifying principle was something that they sought out. And they used this term logos to describe that concept. It was sort of a cipher that when applied to all of life, it unlocked all of life's biggest questions. When the Apostle John came on the scene, he saw Jesus and he understood this concept of the logos, and something clicked for him. He's like, that's the guy. John chapter 1, look at what he wrote. He says, in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The Logos became flesh, and he made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, the one that came from the Father, full of grace and truth. You see, John saw Jesus Christ as the Logos, as the unifying principle that made sense of everything. He is the eternal one, the creator, it says in the book of Colossians. He built the laws and the wisdom that exist in the universe. We saw that this summer when we looked at the Proverbs, that there is this concept, Lady Wisdom. It's the same idea, it's the Logos. It's God who is working and built wisdom into our world. Jesus is the definer of right and wrong because he is God and he's given us understanding of what is good and what is not. He is the solution for mankind's sin and self-destruction. This is why he came, to help us understand what was wrong with us as human beings and what needed to be fixed. And he paid the price for our sin and provided what we needed to save us from our self-destruction. And so he is the Savior. He is the one guiding history as well. You know, a lot of people will tell you today that history is just random. It happened accidentally. No. The Bible says that there is this Logos, there's this concept that unifies everything together, and it's Jesus. And history is built around him. And you know what? You can look at the years that we number the numbers we number our years by. It's around the life of Jesus. And yet, us as individuals, still, we're slow sometimes to orient our own personal life around him. He has a purpose for all of mankind, and he is going to fulfill it, the Bible says. So this Logos is very powerful. Guys, this is what the church believes. And if you hang around here at Renew, we're confident that you're going to start to see how Jesus actually satisfies your deepest needs and your deepest questions. And so we at Renew Church orient ourselves around Jesus, the Logos. And we come together as a church in a community of people because once we've identified that this is the main thing, we want to hold each other to it. We want to remind ourselves. That's why we get together and worship like we did this morning. We want to remind ourselves, this is the main thing, and I don't want to lose focus of the main thing. And when you see church in this way, you come to understand, wow, church is what's really helping me orient myself around the main thing. It's where we learn about the main thing. It's where we remind ourselves about the main thing when we get together to worship. It's where we celebrate the good results of orienting around the main thing. We show videos and you hear people's stories of the good things that God's doing in their life when they orient around him. It's where we teach the wisdom of the main thing. It's where we mobilize together in harmony with the main thing. We recognize that there are certain good works that God wants us to do. It's in harmony with what the Logos would want us to do. And so we do those things together and we mobilize together and we cooperate together. And it's where we show the purpose of the main thing in history and in life. And we demonstrate it just like we're talking about now. Guys, that is a whole different perspective on why church. It's completely different. And the people that really get church, that really get why we come together at Renew, they understand this. You know, it's natural for people to join together in groups with other people that share their interests. You know, you see this in all different places. There are lots of different, social groups in the community. There's forums that you can join in online. All kinds of things for all kinds of interests, right? Things like Comic-Con, where people get together and dress up in costumes because they enjoy doing it and they find other people that do the same thing. Make note of this. Church is a community of people who orient themselves around God and Jesus specifically. That's what we are. We're a group of people. We're kind of like a forum, right? Of people that get together and we orient around Jesus. There's a shared experience, a camaraderie, and shared beliefs. This is especially important in an environment where others may not be sharing the same beliefs and values and interests that we have. And we know that in the GTA, not everyone shares those values and those beliefs that we have. And so it helps us as we get together to hold on to what we believe is the right thing. You know, we live in a world that constantly presents false answers to us. It's fake news in the ultimate sense, right? It's the people and the ads and the messages that come to us that say, you need this to be happy. You need to orient your life around this person. You need to orient your life around this thing or these activities. That's what's going to make you happy. And guys, here's the thing. We need a community of people that keeps us focused on the main thing, that tells us, no, this is the main thing. We've identified it, we've agreed on it together, and we're going to help each other orient around it. You know, I don't want to be one of those people who, as they get older, sees more and more that they built on the wrong foundation. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the Hugh Hefner who could never get enough sexual pleasure. If you've read anything about his biography, you'd know this is a sad situation, what he did in his life, to try to get sexual pleasure and just could never be satisfied. I don't want to be the rock star who went into depression whenever he fell off of the charts. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the one who tries everything and still comes up empty. I don't want to be that one. I want to be the guy whose life shines with excellence because it's based on the right foundation. It's oriented around the right main thing. I want to be the person who knows why he is here and who he is. I want to be the person whose decisions are wise and who bring good results and who bring honor for good reasons. I want to be a person who handles money correctly and who's very generous with it and who gives of himself and of what he has. I want to be someone who loves people and who brings hope to them. I want to be someone who isn't famous but who is loved and respected by his family and by the people that actually know him. That's the kind of person that I want to be. You know, my daughter just got married on September the 17th. I know many of you at Renew Church know her. Some of you were there at the wedding. We wish that all of you could have been there, but the truth is that there is neither a venue nor a budget large enough that could have permitted that, and I know that you all understand that. My daughter and her new husband have been very blessed. From the time that they were very young, they were taught this concept of the Logos, that Jesus is the main thing, and that you orient your life around him. And they've been very blessed to be in families and in churches that have really taught them this, and they've really worked hard to build their life on the right foundation. And I need to tell you, the wedding, it was the most beautiful celebration that I've ever witnessed. Now, I'm a little biased, obviously, I get that. But it was absolutely beautiful. Not because it was the best wedding, there have been better and there will be nicer weddings, but because God was in the center of it. Because you could see that these were people that were really working to build their foundation on God. And it was really beautiful for that. It made it unique and powerful. Guys, I want you to know that all of you at Renew Church have had a part to play in that. And they've got a lot of road in front of them still, but they're off to a great start, and I think that really came through at the wedding. All of you had a part to play in that. All of you that have been there through the years. You know what? There are people in our audience today who changed my daughter's diapers. We've been around a little while now. There are people who taught her in Sunday school. There are people who put on different events that Maggie was there for, and she saw those things and enjoyed those things. People who set up chairs every Sunday. People who opened up their home. You know what? There are people that just suffered patiently and lived their Christian faith in front of my daughter. And they maybe didn't even realize that she was seeing some of that. But she was seeing that, and it had an impact on her. Guys, everyone who modeled for her that Jesus is the main thing, you had a part in where she's at today. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful to all of you. Let me close with a story of J.D. Rockefeller. You know, he was a very wealthy man. He is, of course, or was the great American oil magnate who really just exploded in wealth. You may not realize his dad was a no-good con man and a bigamist. But his mom was a devout Christian who took little Johnny to church every Sunday without fail. They were there. And that's where, according to his own testimony, he learned that he should gain all that he can, save all that he can, and give all that he can. He has a lot of appreciation for church and the community of Christians that helped him get the focus that he had on money and what to do with it. While everyone else was investing in oil, J.D. Rockefeller decided to invest in oil refinery. It was a very wise move. He made billions. He is still considered today the wealthiest American of all time, even beyond Bill Gates. I was amazed to actually discover that. And he was one man who managed to keep his focus, to keep the main thing, with no regrets. He was an amazing philanthropist. Despite all of this money, he kept the right focus. And you wonder, how was he able to do that? And I found a quote that really sums it up. Look at what he says. He says, "There is nothing in this world that can compare with the Christian fellowship. Nothing that can satisfy but Christ." Guys, you see that? He had money, but money wasn't the main thing. Christ was the main thing. Nothing can satisfy but Christ, he said. And then he also, in that same quote, he mentions the Christian community. Did you catch it? That the Christian fellowship reminded him that Christ was the main thing, and it impacted his decisions on investing and the use of money. Guys, that's the deal. That's the point this morning. Why church? Church helps me orient my life around the main thing. And we need it. You need it. Come back next week, and we'll look at the second reason why church.